Hey guys, and welcome back to the Pennies to Pounds podcast with your host Kia. And this is the podcast where we aim to dispel your myths, simplify difficult financial jargon, and rectify your own personal problems. Happy Monday. And as always, I hope you've had a great weekend. I have a very amazing episodes for you. And the reason being is this guest is someone that I've known for so long, and they are doing so amazing in every aspect. Everything that they pick up, I feel like they just do well in. But before I get too into it, too carried away, guess who are you?
Guess who am I? Thank you so much for having me, first of all. And your introduction, it's funny for sure. My name's Hayley Mulenda. I'm an international speaker, author, change agent. I also sit on the brand board of Wagamama, and I'm a school governor for our previous secondary school. And obviously where I went sixth form as well. So yeah, I like to dabble in different things, but I'll definitely say for me, like, speaking is where my main bread and butter is.
This is what I said. Do you see what you listed off there, Hayley? This is what I said. Everything that you touch, you do so well in.
Thank you.
So before we get into the topic of this episode, I want to ask a bit more about you. How did you get started into everything that you're doing? Because you are very young.
Yeah.
But you were doing so well. So for anyone who doesn't know your journey, how did you get started?
Well, I started obviously in school. It's interesting, and obviously where we went to the same secondary school, growing up in an area like ours, I feel like the doors were never, created for us. We have to create for ourselves. And, if I'm going back, I think the entrepreneurial journey started when I used to sell in school, when I used to sell cookies and sweets. And I think all of us went through a phase where we were all just selling something in school.
Yep.
And I think that was where I actually realized I wanted to work for myself. And that kind of opened that spark. So it was kind of then when I kind of started exploring, I guess, what entrepreneurship it means. I think at the time I didn't have vocabulary for it, but I wanted to make money for myself. And then it was when I was in year 11, ran for young mayor.
I remember that. I had my whole Hayley for Young Mayor sticker. I had the lanyard, I had everything.
So yeah, running for young mayor, I think that's when I actually realized I wanted to use my voice for something. And so at the time I thought, okay, I want to use my voice and I want to be able to make money. So I want to have impact, I want to have an income, but how do I merge the two? And I think prior to that, what I felt was it was either I had to be a lawyer, because at the time I was watching Scandal, so Olivia Pope was my example, or Annalise Keating from How to Get Away with Murder, or it's to be a teacher, because I thought, like, these people get paid to shout at us. So I thought, why not get paid to shout at students? And then I remember obviously when I was 16, it was second week of sixth form. And a speaker comes in, and, I'd known this speaker for a while, Action Jackson. He comes in and he graces the stage and he starts speaking to us. And I'd realized actually what he's doing is teaching us, but he's just not limited to a classroom. And he's using his voice to actually empower and actually to inspire. And I think that's what sparked me and said, this is what I want to do. So from then, I reached out. I said, I would love to be your mentor. I started working for him. So first I started working in admin. So I started actually working in his company in admin, but that gave me the opportunity to understand like how to price things, how to liaise with clients, how to, reach out to clients, how to retain clients, how to actually engage in terms of communication, all that stuff. So I got exposed to that from the age of 16. And at the same time, I was like, you know what, I want to actually run my own sessions in school. So I started running my own speaking sessions in school. And then that is when I just started capturing it. And I'll always come and say, like, capturing content is so amazing, because I think it's so important that people are able to also see your growth. So if you actually go on YouTube, there is actually content of me from when I'm 15 doing speaking stuff, actually sharing my story and stuff. Prior to that, I definitely say at the time when I was sharing my talks, I didn't really have a weight to my message, because I didn't know what I was talking about. I think at the time I was just waffling. But now I actually know, what my message is about. And yeah, so since then, I captured the journey. Different schools started seeing it on YouTube. I'm kind of like, we want you in, we want a thing. And since then, every single talk that I've done, I've captured it and shared it. And that gave me more exposure for my next client to reach out to me. And that's just literally been my journey for the past 10 years. So yeah.
It's incredible. 10 years, Hayley.
Yeah.
10 years been in this game.
10 years.
That's crazy. Does it feel like that?
Yes and no. I think because I started so young. So I think when you think about it, and when I'm still quite young, 25. So when I look back at it, I'm kind of like, damn, like I've actually traveled. I've actually done, worked with all sorts of clients. But then I think there's a part of me which is kind of like, I've literally only scrapped about 1% of where I actually want to, what I actually want to do and where I actually want to go. So people can look back at my journey and be like, wow, you've done amazing. But in my head, I'm just kind of like, that was just the starter for me. That was just
there's way more to come.
Now I'm about to go to the main course. So
Yeah.
I always come and say, yeah, that was just a starter. Now I'm really focusing on the main course.
No, I love that. I think what you touched on there is very key. Like you already knew that you wanted to reach a certain level and you wanted to reach certain like wealth, right? Certain status as well. So I want to touch on that to begin with. So I want to talk about the link when it comes to mindset and wealth. Because I think I speak to a lot of people sometimes and they think, oh, do you know what? Like, I'm never going to be rich. I can never do this. I can't ever increase my salary or my income. So I want to ask you, what is, if at all, the link between mindset and wealth?
I think you have to stop looking at finance as something that is not attainable. I think it has to start from there. And I think we always have to look at our experiences as not happening to us, but actually happening for us. And I think a lot of us that are coming from low socioeconomic backgrounds and coming from areas such as, you know, places such as Newham or South London, East London, we've never really seen wealth. And when we had seen wealth, it's kind of like an assembly format. So someone's coming into the assembly and they're leaving. And I think for me, the reason why I gravitate towards mentorship is because mentorship allows you to learn from the mistakes of others so you don't have to go through it. So I always believe that, you know, it does start with a mindset shift. It does start with somebody who has accumulated or attained a certain level of wealth to teach you how did they get there. And I think for me, I was exposed to that from a very young age. I asked all the questions and I started seeing figures. So, you know, for me, where, you know, I've been able to scale my speaking career to over 6 figures now, I was exposed to that level. I was exposed to those type of numbers by accident because I was in office. So I was looking at how do you price things. So obviously where it's kind of like, okay, cool, for a day talk, you're doing like 1K. So I was like, okay, if I calculate 1K. So for me, I was just like, okay, so you can make 1K a day. If I times that by 365 days.
Crazy.
You know, for me, so I started thinking, okay, so this is actually possible. So from the age of 16, I had already broken a barrier that speaking doesn't pay. Like, so that barrier was never there for me. So because I had that mindset, I feel like I gravitated towards higher contracts, higher income, because of the fact that my mindset was there's no barrier there. And I think it has to start with breaking the barrier of what you think about finance and what you think about wealth. And I think there's a lot of young people, especially young people who come from ends, young people who are coming from the hood, should I say, they also believe that money is down to skill set, but I always come and say that money is actually down to reputation. It's not about getting into the room, it's about actually staying in the room. And it's 100%. About how you handle yourself and how you carry yourself in that room as well. So I'm very much the type of person that talks about competence. I don't really believe that it was competence that got me into the room that I went to because I was very unqualified. I mean, I was 21 years old when I really started doing corporate talks. And at the time I had no degree. I'm 21. Some of the clients that would bring me in had been working at some of the firms and organizations longer than I had been alive. But I think more than anything, it was my reputation, it was my zeal, it was my heart, it was humility, it was loyalty, it was consistency. And these are the things that money cannot buy. And I always come and say that wealth has to be built in the area of character before you try and, you know, build it in your bank account, because money comes and goes. But I think wealth is established through your reputation and also the type of character you have.
100%. I completely agree. As someone who was obviously born and raised in the same area as you and Newham,
exactly.
you do have this perception of money because that's just how we see it, you know. So it's a finite resource, you know. You can reach a certain level, but don't get too excited. And then I realized, I think quite early on, because like you, I started properly at 21. I think I started 2021 doing everything I'm doing, all my talks and stuff. And that was a learning curve for me because I didn't know what I was doing and I was just kind of fumbling into these rooms. But then I realized that it was more important for me to build a reputation that people respect me and want me to come back than to say I want to run for a quick bag and just quickly go and get some money now and then that's it and just say whatever. I'm actually thinking, okay, cool. I want people to look at me long term and look at me as a figure in this space and respect me. So what can I do to make sure that I convey that when I do talks?
For sure.
And I maintain that whenever someone talks about me and says, yeah, you know what, Kia's good. You should actually get Kia in.
Exactly.
Or, you know, as you know, there's rooms and conversations that are going on and we're not privy to it, but you want to make sure that your names be mentioned for the right reasons.
Exactly.
And not for the wrong ones.
Exactly.
And it's just so key.
It's so key. It's interesting because, and the reason why I always start with mentorship is because I will always come and say the place and where I am now, I give thanks to God, but I also come and say it came through my heart of service. Every single mentor I've had, I've served. Every single mentor I've had, I've worked for them. Whether I'm working for them for free or they end up paying me. I've always served. Like from the age of 16. So when I worked in the office of Jackson, from the age of 16 to now where I am 25, I still have a mentor and I'm serving them. I'm doing personal branding for them. Had another mentor, I was running his social media. He's older, been doing speaking since 1990.
Wow.
Found him, connected with him, and I came and said, I would love for you to be my mentor, but how can I serve you? And I think a lot of people need to understand that there's a universal law that, you know, whether you believe in karma, but there's a gravity, right? What goes up must come down. It kind of is in a sense of what you give out is what you're going to get back. So if you have this heart of serving and putting that energy out where you want to serve and help people move forward, evidently somebody else is going to do it for you. Like it's only a matter of time that somebody is going to come and pick it up as well. I really feel like life is literally just it's a pattern of cycles, and you have to, in order for your cycle to change, you have to shift that. You have to change the cycle that you've been accustomed to. And I think especially where we've grown up in an area like ends, there really has been a push for individualism in a sense of every man for themselves. I'm gonna get up. I ain't trying to put anybody else on. And there was a time that I was in that place. I remember when I first started speaking, I got quite prideful. I'm one person that I can definitely reflect, and I'm self-aware enough to look back at my mistakes. I got quite prideful because I think for me, I found so much identity at the time in the type of clients I was working with and the type of money I was making. Because I remember when I was 18, first year uni, and I remember when I got paid my first secondary school talk for like a day talk, I got paid at 1.5. And I thought to myself, yeah, I've made it now. Boom. You know, no one can come chat to me. Everyone that came and said, speaking ain't thing, I got 1.5K, la, 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 la. Obviously, I'm 18. Like, for you to come and say you made that in a day at the age of 18, for me, I'm gassed. I'm like, bruh, like, cool. And I'd only just been speaking for 2 years. So I'm kind of like, prior to that, the first paid speaking engagement I had was £50. And in a year, I scaled it to 1.5. So for me, I was just kind of like, yeah, come on, no one can come talk to me, da-da-da-da. But quickly, life humbled me in a way that I understood that, you know, money is about how much you have, but wealth is actually about how much you give. And my wealth mindset now, I'm at a place in my life where I've accumulated so much knowledge, network, wealth, where I'm actually in a place I'm kind of like, no, actually, how can I give back to my community? How can I give back to the young girls from ends who are coming up after me? Like I mentor probably over about 200 young people, and I'm making sure that they're in the right rooms, make sure I'm having the right conversations, like even going back to being a school governor for Angela's and making sure that there is better connections for those girls, you know, working with the corporate clients that I have and making sure they get work experience, making sure they get shadowed, because for me, I'm grateful that I was exposed to speaking from 16. But for anybody who wants to maybe be a fashion designer or someone who wants to be a podcaster or someone who may want to be a radio host, the unfortunate thing with traditional education is that you're constantly getting the assemblies that are kind of like, if you want to, you know, go into Credit Suisse will come in. If you want to be an accountant, if you want to be a lawyer, you know, Clifford Chance will come in. But what about the creatives? What about those who are the entrepreneurs? What about those who want to make money for themselves and they don't know how to? What about the literate conversations about financial literacy, about accounting, about compound interest? Like, these are the type of conversations I want to expose to young Black girls from ends so that they understand that wealth doesn't have to be something that is a dream. It actually can be very much attainable, and it can actually very much reach your hands.
Yeah, I love that. And I think them seeing you is almost like the proof that I can do this too. And I think sometimes we do need to see that proof from people who have come from my area, have done what I've done, but have been able to reach these heights. So I think it's a testament to yourself as well, doing everything that you're doing. I want to circle back on something that you touched on, which was personal brand. This is something that you're very good at. You created a very good personal brand.
Thank you.
And you've mentioned that you've helped other people build up their personal brand. So I want to ask you, what comes into someone who wants to start building up their personal brand, and what key elements should they consider when saying, right, okay, cool, I'm going to create a personal brand for myself? What should they consider when trying to build that?
I think you need to work backwards. You need to work backwards in terms of personal branding. People are always thinking about where they need to start. I always think about, where do you want to finish? In terms of what do you want someone to say about your brand in 10 years' time because your brand existed? Because you existed, because you put out certain content, what do you want them to say about you? So for me, I always came and said, for a young Black girl in 10 years' time, I wanted to know I could walk into any room and I could get, if I'm specifically lining up with speaking, I want them to say, I believe that I could speak around the world because Hayley had a personal brand that was transparent about her journey. So now when I understand the impact that I want to make, I can now think, okay, this is the type of personal brand that I want to build. And then I can go backwards. So now it's kind of like, okay, cool. So what do I have to gauge about my story? One thing in terms of personal branding, make sure you capture everything. Capture the highs, the lows,
all of it.
Everything. Make sure you capture everything. It's very rare that if I have a speaking engagement, I don't have a videographer with me. It's very rare. Every single speaking engagement I have, I've always got a videographer with me. Even COVID, I made sure I had a recording, even though it was a virtual, just so that there is content that is captured. And I'd say another thing in terms of personal branding is make sure you stand for something, man. I think
so important.
You have to stand for something. You have to have a niche. You have to stand for something, because there's something that Tupac Shakur has said, is that if you don't stand for anything, you know, you'll die for nothing. And I think at the end of the day, like, it's quite a morbid conversation, but there's going to come a time where, you know, we're going to leave this earth and meet our creator, and there has to be something that people remember you by. You know, when it comes to the eulogies, people don't come and talk about, you know, how much you made or, you know, what things. They'll come and talk about what did you stand by, and you have to make sure your personal brand aligns with that. I'm all about integrity. Like, don't have something you stand by and people don't see it online. I think, unfortunately, people focus so much on building the profile and they don't focus a lot on building the personhood. And I think you have to be someone in terms of personal brand. The word that is very, very important is person. Make sure you're building something that in terms of your character, integrity, humility, and make sure it's just an overflow onto your digital platforms. Like, I never want anyone to see me online and feel like I'm unapproachable. So I make sure that I'm very approachable online. So I reply back to DMs. Like, a lot of people always ask, oh, Hayley, would you ever get someone who's a social media manager? And I'm kind of like, the reason why I would never do that is because some people sometimes will message you like, you know, very confidential situations.
Yeah, it's
and
very personal.
I want people to know that I'm a human being and I'm going to respond back. Like, we see everything. I'm very much responding. And I think, personal branding has to be rooted in authenticity. It has to be rooted in being a real human, you know. And I think, unfortunately, personal branding, the type of personal branding that I've seen has been rooted a lot in perfectionism. But Dr. Brené Brown says something that's perfect. And she comes and says, perfectionism doesn't stop you from, you know, judgment. It stops you from being seen. And I think many people want to have personal brands where they don't want to be judged. But in fact, your personal brand, if it's perfect, you're no longer being seen. So if you want to be seen with a personal brand, you have to be authentic.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's so important, because even if you decide, right, I'm going to make sure it looks perfect and it's pristine, you're almost playing a character.
Yeah, for sure.
And like you said, like, if you want it to stand the test of time, you want it to stand 10 years, are you comfortable playing that same character for 10 years? Or are you going to evolve and grow? But now you can't grow with your brand because you created this persona that wasn't yours.
For sure.
So I think that is so key. And that's something that I definitely learned trying to put together mine. I think in the beginning, you think you want everyone. And that's the nature of social media, right? If you look at places like Instagram, everyone shows the highlights of their life and the best parts. So you almost slip into this feeling of thinking, right, I've got to show the best parts of me and only show the best. But then I've gotten comfortable with jumping on LinkedIn and saying like, this didn't go right. But this is what I've learned from it. And like you said, it's just the transparency that I think people really appreciate. Man. Which is so key.
It's all about the journey.
People
don't need to hear about the destination. The destination don't exist.
It's always moving though.
It's always shifting.
Always.
Like, I'm sure that now when you start the podcast, the destination at one point was to start the podcast. Now you start the podcast.
Now we're here. So now it's different goals. Destination. Exactly.
So if you are constantly thinking about a destination, it's kind of like, nah. And life changes as well. Seasons change. Like, things happen. Like, we evolve as human beings. Like, the vision changes because we change. And I think, you know, so when people are kind of like, oh, I want this to be my personal brand. For me, my personal brand is just to be real. Like, let me just be open and real about whatever season I'm in. There was a time when I was doing rap. There's a time when I was singing. There's a time that I'm doing speaking. Now I'm married. So now my content is going to a relationship. I would have never thought, I'm telling you, I would have never thought that I would ever be on social media talking about relationships, abstinence, sex. No. Prior to Sterling, no one had ever seen any of my relationships online.
True. That's very true.
Ever.
That's very true.
So even me being open about my love life, that came at a season of my life. So it's just one of those things that I'm learning as I'm going. Like, and I will never come and say that I've got it together. I will never come and say that I know what I'm doing. Like, there's been briefs I've had from certain clients, or there's been certain tasks that I've had given to me where I'm just kind of like, sugar, honey, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But that's okay. And I think that's the beauty of being a human. The beauty of being a human is that seasons change. And sometimes you're not going to know what you're going to do in that season. But sometimes you just got to, you know, faith it until you make it, you know.
That's
and
it.
Just have the faith that everything that you've experienced prior has equipped you for that moment. Because I don't believe that where you are in life has just happened by coincidence. I believe that everything has happened for you. You are in a position where you just have to utilize wisdom and seek wisdom for you to look back, reflect, and be like, actually, okay, cool. Maybe when I was doing admin, I picked up operations. Okay, when I was doing speaking, I picked up communication. Okay, maybe I should just learn to communicate that I don't know how to do this. Like, everything that we've gone through in life is there to benefit this current season, and this current season is there to benefit the next one. So yeah.
Absolutely. When it comes to people with their personal aspirations, how can people use their money and their wealth to help be a catalyst to reach those goals? Because I think a lot of people think, okay, cool, this is what I want to achieve, but can I actually get there? Is there a way that maybe the money that I've got right now can help me to reach that sooner or reach those goals? What would you say?
I would say, if you've got capital, invest in yourself, man. And what I mean by investing in yourself is invest in courses. Like, I've spent probably about like 15K in terms of how to become a better speaker and how to build my personal brand. And, you know, if you came and told me that that was the amount of money that I would have spent, I would have told you no way. But then when you're learning from somebody who's also a multimillionaire, it's kind of like, realistically, it's worth the investment. And we have to also remember, like, a jungle doesn't come without one seed. And you can't be praying that God is going to give you a jungle if you're not willing to put down a seed. So I think it's really important that we have to be ones that are willing to put down seed when it comes to our growth. Like, look at the finance and the capital that you have that you're putting down to investment as a seed, that it's only a matter of time that it's going to harvest. Like, it, you know, people need to understand that a seed harvest doesn't happen overnight, right? Like, the same day you plant a seed is not the same day you're going to harvest, but just know it's going to come. You know, it's with the right temperature, with the right place. So I definitely say, if you've got finance, definitely invest into courses. I'll say, if you've got finance, invest into traveling.
Oh, I love traveling. Yeah.
Open your mind up to the world. Open your mind up to know that this UK is literally only 0.01% of what this world has to offer. I always make sure I'm traveling and I'm networking, building that network. Invest into a plane ticket and go to a networking event abroad. Build your network abroad, because now what happens is your reputation no longer is limited to London or the UK. You're allowing your name to reap in rooms that are way beyond you, bigger than you. And that is the most important thing. And I'll say the third thing, in terms of how you can use, I guess, capital, your wealth to build, I'll say, your personal aspirations, is give back. Put your money back into your community. Put your money back into the people who you're mentoring or serving. Because for me, I would say, out of all the things that I've accomplished, it will always be knowing that there's young women who I have been able to, I wouldn't even say about finance, just time. Because I wish I had that when I was younger. I wish I had those hard conversations. I wish I had the open conversations. I wish I had a woman where I could open up and speak to about finance and stuff. Because I was having a conversation with someone quite recently, and I was saying that it's only within the past year, it's only in the past year in terms of the UK, in terms of a British woman sitting me down and saying, okay, this is how we're going to take your business income to XYZ. Prior to that, all my mentors have been American. So that's another reason as to why I've been also had this, because the American dream is a real thing. Like, the way that Americans speak and the way that they think is very different to the UK. And I'm grateful that I've been able to tap into that in terms of American mentorship and the coaches there. But this is the first time in the year that I've actually had a British woman set me down, a woman of color sit me down and be like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And this is how we're going to get you here. And this is how we're going to get you in certain rooms. This is how we're going to get certain clients. And I'm 25. I don't want the next generation to wait until they're 25 to have that conversation. If I can have that conversation when I'm 15, then so be it. If it has to be me to have that conversation, then so be it. And I don't feel like if we're going to save a generation or inspire a generation, it shouldn't be dependent on one person. We should all come together and at least take one young person under our wing and be like, this is how you do it, and this is how you heal, and this is how you make sure you're, building a reputable brand, etc., etc. So yeah, I definitely would say, as I said, like travel, invest in courses, and make sure you give back.
It's so important what you said there as well. Like, I said from the very beginning, I know how hard it was for me to get through those doors.
Yeah.
And you and I had conversations, especially right in the early beginning parts of my journey, where I didn't know what I was doing, and I was trying to get through these doors. So I've now made it my mission to hold those doors open for everyone coming behind me,
110%.
because it shouldn't be hard. Because I think some people think, you know, I struggle, so you should struggle, so I'm going to shut the door behind me. Yeah. No, let's make it easier.
There's gatekeepers.
Why?
There is people who do gatekeep, unfortunately. And I think people gatekeep out of their own insecurity.
Yeah.
They gatekeep, and it's this scarcity mindset, in a sense of, you know, crabs in a barrel, in a sense of, if I get to the top, somebody else is going to drag me down. So I'm going to keep everyone in the bottom, so no one can drag me down. And it's such a toxic mindset. And I see it in our community, in terms of how people are willing to pull other people down so they can stay at the top. You know, and I there's a quote that I love, which says, "We rise by standing on the shoulders of giants. We rise by lifting others," you know, and that's the best way to, I personally believe, the best way for you to, if you really want to see success, if you really want to get to the top, rise for others, because they are the people that are actually going to advocate for you. The people that you help to get to the top, they will be your ambassadors. They will be the ones that will advocate for you and make sure you stay in those rooms. So
yes.
If you are, and I always come and say, life has a funny way of humbling you. Sometimes the people who you're shutting the doors behind can sometimes be the very same people who end up being the people who open the gate.
Yeah.
Or can limit you and stuff. Because I've experienced it. I've experienced people who have shut doors in my face, people that doubted me, blah, blah, blah. Then you get to a place, an opportunity where, you know, they come back and they're kind of like, I need your help. And, you know, for me, because of my faith and because I do really believe that you reap what you sow. I'm not the type that's kind of like, oh, because you treat me like this, I'm going to put it here. I'm just kind of like, listen, like, you know what? Whatever you did is whatever you did. But I'm going to prove to you that if I do things differently, hopefully that will inspire your heart to stop your BS, and you can open up the doors for other people. That's the only way that we can battle it, is with kindness, literally, and with love. Because if we are the ones that hold that bitterness and hold that unforgiveness and keep the doors closed on the people who want to close the doors on us, we're just going to end up in the same cycle.
It's just going to be a vicious cycle.
Literally.
And we need to get out of it.
For sure.
So I want to ask you, when it comes to financial abundance and the feelings of self-worth, would you say that there's a connection? And for anyone who perhaps doesn't feel worthy, what would be some tips that you'd give to someone to kind of change their mindset and improve how they view themselves and financial abundance?
Yeah, I think there is a bit of a connection. I do think there is a bit of a connection. There is definitely joy if you are eating lobster over Nando's.
There is joy, yeah.
Or there is a joy if you're doing fine dining and eating caviar with salmon over, you know, a GBK or a McDonald's. Like, I do feel that I remember one of the best conversations I had was with a mentor of mine when I was about 19, and he met me in the Shard for breakfast. And I remember he went breakfast, I had him in the Shard, and I said to him, "You don't eat in the Shard." I was like, "The Shard's expensive." Like, I was like, for breakfast, I was kind of like, whoa, okay, crazy. And he came and said to me, "I'm not at a place where I can eat in the Shard for breakfast yet, but I always said to myself, I'm going to do something once a month that I want to be doing when I have the financial freedom that I want to have." And I think it starts with that. I think don't wait until you got the finance, and don't wait until that moment for you to start creating the habits. I think if you like caviar, save up for you to go eat caviar once a month. And I think it's about making sure, because I really do believe that if you have a taste of life, something happens when it expands. I don't know what it is. I really feel that there's a law that when you allow yourself to experience something and have a taste of it, life happens in a way where you end up just getting more of it. It's like on Instagram, if you get your first 1,000 likes, it's very likely now you're going to get more 1,000 likes. Yeah. If you get 1,000 retweets, it's very likely now that you're going to get 1,000 retweets. It's something like that. So the likelihood, if you have caviar, if you like it, the likelihood is you're going to eat it more. But if you don't have it, you're never not going to get more of it. So I think, you know, it first starts with, one, understanding that your worth starts with you understanding you deserve it. And when you have it once, it means you can have it again. That's the first thing. And I'll say the second thing is, in terms of your worth and making sure that, you know, wealth is I would say you don't look at wealth in a way that it's kind of like, I'm not worthy of it. Is get around friends who actually are, I wouldn't say wealthy, but friends that are actually very financially secure, because their type of conversations and the way that they'll communicate would be very different to friends that are financially struggling. I can see the difference in terms of certain friends that I've had where they're constantly in places of, and it's not to come and say these are friends that I don't have anymore. I'm just aware of the type of conversations I'm having with those who are financially secure, with those who are struggling financially. And those who are financially secure, weirdly enough, are always looking for risk. They're always looking to have the wild experiences. They're always looking for the next thing to invest into. They're more likely to be into Web3, NFTs, cryptos. But those who are struggling financially are the ones who are more likely to be quite negative. The self-talk is quite negative. Oh, I can't do that. What do you mean? Like, no, we shouldn't be doing that. Come on. Or they're always kind of like, oh God, I need God to give me more money. Or it's very much wishful thinking. Or I need. And there's the mentality that I've seen where some people are kind of like, also kind of like an entitlement. And then you've got people who are kind of like, I'm not entitled to anything. I'm going to go out and get it with my own two hands. So I've seen the difference. And not everyone's the same. Some people can have a lack of finance and still be very faithful and still be very hopeful. And there can be some people who have lots of finance and have no happiness and no freedom at all. So I'm not saying everyone is the same, but I have seen certain conversations that is very different amongst two different groups. And the conversations that I appreciate with my friends who are very financially secure and have great businesses or great income is they are constantly bullish with their opportunities. They don't take no as an answer, and they don't take rejection as rejection. They take rejection as redirection.
Yes.
They're very much kind of like, oh, that didn't work out. Okay, cool. What's the next venture? And they don't let it cripple them. And I appreciate having people like that in my circle, because it just reminds me, in life, you gotta grab your fate with two hands.
You have to.
You have to
decide where you go and where you end up, not just let it happen to you. And I completely agree. I think I did a similar thing where I not necessarily changed my friendship group, but you almost have different circles and you have different conversations in the circles. And I realized that even sometimes the dreams that I will dream were too small. Yeah. They'll say, is that it?
Yeah.
And I'm like, but this is massive. Yeah. But you start to be around people and they make you dream bigger and aim higher and take bigger risks. And I'm such a risk taker. I'm just like, it'll work if it works. If it doesn't work, then we keep going. And I think that's just a good mentality to have.
But I love that you're a risk taker, because I always come and say, we focus so much on what if you fall, what if you fail, but what if you fly?
Exactly.
What if you do succeed? Like, we are so prepared for the failure or the falling, but what if you actually succeed? And that's why I'm always kind of like, people actually are fearful of that. They're not fearful of the failure and the falling. No. They're fearful of succeeding and they can't sustain it. And this is why you have to cultivate the habits and cultivate that self-worth, that character from when you have nothing. I always come and say the greatest lessons happen in the valley, not the mountaintop. The greatest lessons happen when you're broke. The greatest lessons happen when you're hungry. The greatest lessons happen... Like, I would always come and say my most resilient self was my 16-year-old self. My most hungry self was my 16-year-old self. When I was coming from ends, I didn't have nothing. I was literally kind of like, yo, like, I got to make it at ends. I got to do something. Now, while I'm in a position where I can make certain decisions and my network is better and higher and I have a higher net worth and all that stuff, I can look back at it and be like, yeah, I'm getting lazy, man. Like, that's why I've had to challenge myself and be like, Hayley, you got to become bullish again. Yes. So I've even had to, because there was a time when I didn't go networking events for like years. Because in my head, I was just kind of like, I'm cool with my network. I'm right. But now it's just kind of like, no, Hayley. So that's why I like this year, I went to Dubai twice. And I was kind of like, okay, cool. Went to Dubai. I saw a billboard in terms of speaking at a women's conference and stuff. I was like, let me connect with the founder. Boom, fly back out, connect with her, reach out with all these people. And the old Hayley would have been like, nah, like, what's the point? Like, you can do networking on LinkedIn, but we have to go back to a place of, if you want something, you have to grab it with two hands.
You have to. And
we have to be ones that are willing to network, again, expand our, mindset, expand out the people around us so that we can expand the way we think. So, yeah.
Hayley, this has been So incredible.
Thank
So
you.
many
Thank you for having
gems
me.
that you've dropped. For anyone listening and watching who wants to connect with you and follow your journey and see what married life is like, where can they find you?
They can find me at Hayley Mulenda, HayleyMulenda. That is where I am everywhere. So Hayley Mulenda, and my website is www.hayleymulenda.com. And then if you want to see any marriage content, I've got a joint podcast with my husband, which is called For the Record with Mr. and Mrs. Record, where we basically talk about all things in terms of dating, relationships, being newly young married couples, because got married quite young, and just navigating that. And that is, our socials for that is a.new.record, because our last names are record. So yeah.
Hayley, I love that. Thank you so much for coming to the episode.
Thank you for having me, man.
And for everyone listening and watching, we're back again next week with another episode. Bye, guys.